Welcome, dear listener. Tonight we travel back in time to a land of gods, temples, and timeless stories. Imagine Greece, more than 2,000 years ago, where faith shaped every act, every step, every heartbeat. High above the clouds stood Mount Olympus, home of the gods, shining with mystery and divine authority. At its summit ruled Zeus, the Thunderbringer, the father of gods and mortals, the guardian of law and order. People honored him not only with words or prayers, but also through strength, skill, and noble competition. In the valley of Olympia, sacred groves whispered in the wind, and marble temples reached for the sky. Here, citizens from many cities gathered, not to fight wars, but to celebrate harmony under Zeus's gaze. They brought offerings, lit fires, and swore peace during the festival, giving the world a rare moment of unity. The Olympic Games were born, where human effort became worship, and each race honored the King of Gods. So close your eyes and listen. The cheers, the sandals striking stone, the hymns rising to the heavens begin. Close your eyes and picture the world of ancient Greece, a place filled with light, stone, and endless sea. Cities rose among hills, their white walls glowing under the sun, each one proud of its gods and traditions. The people lived close to nature, with olive groves, vineyards, and goats climbing sharp slopes by the shore. Everyday life was simple, and yet touched by something sacred, as if the divine was always near and watching. Farmers rose early, guided their plows, and prayed for rain, believing the gods listened to their humble words. Merchants sailed across the Aegean, carrying pottery, wine, and stories, always asking Zeus for safe winds. Children learned songs, myths, and dances that honored their ancestors and the mighty deities of Olympus. Even meals were shared with reverence, bread and wine, offered first to the gods before passing to family. Faith was not a distant idea, but a rhythm woven into every act, binding mortals to the heavens above. To the Greeks, the gods were powerful yet present, shaping fate, guiding storms, and inspiring courage. At the center of their devotion was Zeus, the father of gods and men, ruler of sky and keeper of order. Temples to Zeus stood tall, with columns like stone trees, built to remind all of his justice and power. Pilgrims walked for days to bring offerings, placing oil, honey, or simple wreaths before his sacred altar. In markets, elders told stories of Zeus, not as a distant figure, but as a protector watching their lives. Festivals filled the cities with music, incense, and chants, reminding every citizen that they belonged to him. Olympia, a sacred valley, became the most important place to feel the presence of Zeus in daily life. Here, the air felt different. The trees seemed older, and the ground carried the weight of countless prayers. Stone paths led to shrines, and the great temple shone with carvings that told stories of gods and heroes. Visitors described the statue of Zeus, golden and ivory, so radiant it seemed alive and ready to speak. Yet Zeus was not worshipped with fear alone. He was honored with joy, games, and acts of human excellence. To the Greeks, strength and beauty were reflections of the divine gifts to be cultivated and offered back. Athletes trained in the gymnasia, running beneath open skies, preparing to honor the god with their bodies. For them, victory was not personal glory, but a sign of favor, a bridge between mortal effort and divine will. And so, devotion to Zeus was not locked within temples, but expressed through life, art, and noble deeds. This deep connection between worship and daily life prepared the stage for something far greater to come. The Games at Olympia were more than contests. They were the purest way to say thank you to the sky. Every race, every throw, every cheer carried a message upward, a prayer in motion, a hymn in strength. Through this harmony of body and spirit, the Greeks found a way to unite faith and action in a single act. And thus, in the world of ancient Greece, the seeds of the Olympic Games began to take root in the soil. High above the valleys and seas, the Greeks imagined a mountain reaching into the endless sky, Mount Olympus. Here, among clouds and eternal light, lived the gods, each with power, each with a story woven into human fate. At the center of them all stood Zeus, the thunder-bringer, the protector of justice, the father of gods and mortals. His voice was the rumble of storms, his presence the flash of lightning, his will a force that shaped destinies. To the Greeks, Zeus was not only ruler of the heavens, but also the guardian of order and the balance of life. They believed he watched over oaths, punished dishonesty, and blessed those who acted with honor and kindness. When travelers set out across wild lands, they trusted in Zeus Xenios, protector of guests and sacred hospitality. To lie, to betray, or to mistreat a guest was to offend Zeus himself, a sin feared by every Greek household. In the courts of law, people raised their hands and swore truth before his name, knowing perjury was dangerous. Zeus was everywhere at feasts, on battlefields, in the skies above, and in the calm silence of the countryside. Yet, unlike distant gods, he was close, a figure who could be praised with songs, offerings, and acts of respect. Stories told how he ruled with a golden staff, listened to prayers, and settled disputes even among the other gods. He was not just feared, but also trusted, for his justice gave structure to both heaven and earth. The Greeks carved his image in stone, tall and strong, holding thunderbolts, a reminder of power and guidance. Artists painted him with calm eyes, not cruel, but watchful, as though his gaze saw both faults and virtues. Parents taught children to honor Zeus in every meal, every promise, every gathering beneath the open sky. Festivals in his name filled streets with music, dancers, incense, and prayers that rose like smoke to the heavens. Priests tended his altars, where flames burned day and night, carrying the devotion of the people to the sky. At Olympia, Zeus received the highest honors, his temple the greatest among all sacred places of the Greeks. Inside stood a statue of gold and ivory, so grand it seemed alive, a marvel counted among the wonders of the world. Visitors spoke of feeling awe, as though Zeus himself sat before them, smiling with power and everlasting calm. But Zeus was more than marble or myth. He was the living breath behind thunder, wind, and the harmony of nature. Every storm that swept across the Aegean reminded sailors that Zeus ruled the skies with both fury and mercy. Every harvest blessed with rain whispered his generosity, a bond between humans and the god above them. And so, to know Zeus was to know balance, strength, and fairness, values the Greeks held as sacred virtues. The Olympic Games became the purest way to honor these gifts, offering skill and endurance in his name. To run fast, to throw far, to strive with discipline was to reflect the power and justice of Zeus on earth. No treasure was needed, for the crown of olive leaves from his sacred tree was enough to bless the victor. Through him, the Greeks saw that worship was not only prayer, but also action, courage, and noble competition. And in every victory, they believed Zeus's favor shone, linking the sweat of mortals with the light of the divine. Far from the bustle of cities, beyond rivers and hills, lay a sacred valley known as Olympia, blessed by time. This place was more than soil and stone. It was a sanctuary where mortals reached upward to touch the divine. The air carried a quiet stillness, broken only by the rustle of olive leaves and the call of distant birds. Here, nature and faith were one, and every tree, rock, and breeze seemed to whisper the presence of Zeus. Travelers came from across Greece, walking dusty roads, bringing offerings, songs, and prayers for the great god. Olympia stood as neutral ground, free from conflict, a space devoted to peace under the gaze of Zeus. The centerpiece was the great Temple of Zeus, a marvel of columns and stone, glowing under the summer sunday. Its walls told stories in carved reliefs, tales of heroes and labors that reminded visitors of strength and virtue. Within, the statue of Zeus, vast and radiant, seemed alive, a vision of calm majesty seated upon his throne. Made of ivory and gold, it shone in torchlight, filling hearts with awe and reverence beyond simple words. The temple grounds were alive with rituals, priests tending fires, and pilgrims offering oil, honey, and wreaths. Every sacrifice was gentle, symbolic, a way of saying thank you for rain, harvest, safety, and shared life. Around the sanctuary, groves of olive trees grew, believed to be touched by the blessing of the Sky Father. From these trees came the sacred branches used to crown victors, a symbol of purity and eternal honor. Paths wound through shrines, altars, and treasuries where cities displayed gifts, each seeking Zeus's favor. The very stones beneath the pilgrims' feet felt charged with centuries of devotion, a tapestry of faith. When the festival of Zeus approached, Olympia transformed from silence into a vibrant sea of humanity. Families, athletes, poets, and rulers gathered, setting aside rivalries to join in shared reverence and celebration. Stalls appeared with food and wares, while storytellers recited epics that echoed through the sacred valley. But above all noise and color, the temple of Zeus remained the heart, the silent witness to all devotion. Every prayer spoken, every hymn sung, every contest later held began first with honor at his sacred altar. Here, athletes sacrificed before competing, asking Zeus for strength, fairness, and courage in the days ahead. The sanctuary was not only stone and ritual, but also a meeting place of spirit, faith, and human unity. Olympia reminded all that devotion could transcend walls and weapons, offering peace where division once ruled. The Olympic truce was born here, a sacred promise of safety, ensuring pilgrims and athletes could travel freely. This peace was itself a gift to Zeus, an act of worship through restraint and respect among rival cities. The sanctuary's beauty was not in wealth, but in its role as a bridge between heaven and earth, God and man. Olive groves swayed as if singing, while smoke from sacred fires curled toward the sky in endless prayer. Children ran across the grounds, wide-eyed at statues and songs, learning that faith could be joyful and alive. For the Greeks, Olympia was not simply a location, but a living symbol of harmony under Zeus's watchful care. And so the valley stood, timeless and sacred, preparing to witness the birth of games that would honor eternity. In ancient Greece, devotion was not only spoken in prayers or carved in stone, but also lived through the human body. The Greeks believed strength, beauty, and skill were divine gifts, reflections of order shaped by the hand of Zeus. To honor him fully, they felt it was not enough to kneel or sing. They must strive, sweat, and achieve with dignity. Thus, competition became a sacred act, a living hymn, a way to show gratitude through motion, discipline, and courage. The idea of worship through sport was born, joining faith with physical excellence under the open sky of Olympia. Athletes trained for months, even years, guided by mentors who taught that effort itself was an offering to Zeus. Every run across dusty tracks, every throw of the discus, every practice of balance carried the weight of devotion. It was said that an athlete's heartbeat echoed like a drum of prayer, each breath a whisper to the gods above. The people admired this, for it showed that worship was not only for priests, but for all who sought excellence. Strength became sacred when it served harmony, not destruction, and when offered in honor of the Sky Father. Zeus was not pleased by gold or riches, but by discipline, fairness, and the noble pursuit of personal greatness. The athletes gathered at Olympia knew this, and they prepared their bodies as others prepared altars or hymns. Training grounds became places of quiet devotion, where effort was equal to incense rising from temple fires. Parents encouraged sons to compete, not for wealth, but for the chance to please Zeus and win eternal honor. Victory was never guaranteed, yet striving itself was holy, a reflection of human limits touched by divine light. The crowd, too, took part in this worship, cheering not just for athletes, but for the spirit of Zeus within them. Every contest was framed as a sacred dialogue, a mortal reaching upward, a god watching with approving calm. The Olympic Games, then, were more than sport. They were living prayers, made in sweat, strength, and shared hope. Each race was like a hymn sung in rhythm of footsteps, each throw of a javelin a gesture toward the sky. The long jump, the discus, the foot races, all were not only trials of skill but also rituals honoring Zeus. The Greeks believed victory showed divine favor, but even defeat carried worth. For effort itself was a gift. The crown of olive leaves symbolized this truth. Purity of spirit mattered more than wealth or earthly treasures. Thus, sport was transformed into faith, and faith was renewed through the striving bodies of mortal men. To witness such contests was to witness worship, for the human form was seen as a temple shaped by gods. The games reminded all that Zeus was not honored only with words, but with action, courage, and noble pursuit. This belief united people across city-states, teaching that in striving together they shared one divine purpose. The roar of the crowd became an offering, the rhythm of drums and flutes, a chorus of prayers without words. And so, through games of strength and speed, the Greeks celebrated Zeus with devotion more alive than stone. In Olympia, every contest was a bridge between earth and heaven, a meeting place of mortal and divine. And in every athlete's heart, the truth was clear. To compete with honor was to worship the Father of gods. Long ago, when rivalries burned between Greek cities, there was still one power strong enough to unite them all. That power was faith in Zeus, the king of gods, whose will inspired peace during the time of the sacred games. The legend tells that the first gathering at Olympia was born not from conquest, but from devotion and shared hope. Kings and envoys met, not with weapons, but with olive branches, declaring a truce in honor of the Sky Father. This truce, the Ikacharia, meant no army could march, no battle could rage, while the festival of Zeus began. It was a sacred peace, stronger than walls or treaties, respected because it carried the authority of the divine. Across mountains and seas, messengers ran to every city, announcing the time when war must yield to worship. For weeks before the games, they carried the sacred word, and all of Greece paused to honor the decree. Athletes, poets, and pilgrims set out along dusty paths, certain of safety as they journeyed to Olympia. Enemies who once clashed on battlefields now walked side by side, bound together by the law of Zeus. The first Olympic gathering was unlike any other event, a meeting of hearts as much as a meeting of bodies. The Valley of Olympia filled with tents, banners, and voices, each city bringing its sons to prove their devotion. Before the contests began, ceremonies honored Zeus with sacrifices, hymns, and prayers rising like smoke to heaven. The altar blazed with sacred fire, tended by priests who reminded all that competition was itself a holy act. Athletes pledged fairness, swearing to compete with honor and to respect Zeus in every throw and every stride. This oath bound them as firmly as laws, for to break it meant dishonor, not only before men but before the gods. The crowd gathered, families, rulers, and strangers united, their differences silenced by the sacred truce. Here, for a short time, Greece was one, and the divisions of city and border dissolved in shared reverence. Each race that followed was not just about speed or strength, but a prayer embodied in human motion and effort. The first runners lined the starting track, bare feet pressing the earth, eyes lifted to the temple of Zeus. At the signal, they surged forward, each step pounding like a drumbeat in honor of the king of Olympus. The crowd roared, not only for victory, but for the spirit of unity that swept through the sacred valley. For the Greeks, this moment was proof that devotion could tame rivalry and replace it with harmony and joy. The games became a stage where mortals reached upward, showing Zeus their strength, courage, and noble spirit. Even the losers carried pride, for their striving itself was counted as worthy in the eyes of gods and men. The victors received olive crowns, but more than that, they received the eternal blessing of Zeus's favor. Songs were sung in their names, not as warriors, but as athletes who brought peace through sacred competition. The first gathering left an imprint on memory, a reminder that worship could rise from sweat as well as prayer. From then on, every 4 years, the call of Olympia echoed, drawing Greeks to honor Zeus above all else. The games were no longer just contests, but sacred traditions, symbols of unity, peace, and living faith. And thus, in that first great festival, Greece discovered that even in a world divided, Zeus could bring them together. The games at Olympia were more than contests of strength. They were grand festivals woven with ritual and meaning. Every gathering began with a procession where athletes, priests, and citizens walked together beneath the summer Sunday. Trumpets rang out across the valley, their notes echoing against hills that had heard centuries of sacred voices. The crowd fell into reverent silence as priests led the way, carrying olive branches and vessels of holy water. At the heart of Olympia stood the great altar of Zeus, built of ash from countless offerings over generations. Here, animals were sacrificed, not in violence, but in ritual, as smoke rose like a bridge from earth to heaven. The scent of incense and roasted meat mingled in the air, reminding all that the gods were near and watching. Athletes placed their hands upon sacred stones, swearing to compete honorably and uphold Zeus's divine order. This oath was sacred. To break it was to defy the god himself, an act that carried shame across the land. Once sworn, the athletes walked to the temple of Hera, where another ceremony bound them in unity and devotion. Here stood statues of past victors, silent witnesses of glory, urging the new generation to honor Zeus with effort. Poets recited hymns, musicians played flutes and lyres, and dancers moved in circles to honor the Father of Gods. Every voice and note rose together, shaping the atmosphere of awe that made Olympia a place beyond the ordinary. When the fire was lit on the altar of Zeus, the games officially began, glowing like the dawn of a new age. The flame burned day and night, a constant reminder that the eyes of Olympus never strayed from the sacred grounds. Contests were framed as offerings, each race or throw dedicated to the god who ruled from the mountain's peak. The stadion, the foot race, was always first, for speed was considered pure, swift like the will of Zeus himself. The crowd watched with pounding hearts, their cheers blending with prayers that filled the valley with energy. Every winner crowned with olive leaves became not only a champion but a servant of Zeus's eternal honor. The sacred procession returned after each day of contests, ensuring that victory was matched with ritual respect. Priests poured libations of wine upon the ground, thanking Zeus for granting safety, fairness, and divine spectacle. In the evenings, banquets filled the air with song and storytelling, weaving memory into worship and delight. Athletes, though weary, joined poets and musicians, for they knew their glory was tied to the worship of Zeus. The games were not meant only for bodies, but also for minds, and philosophy found its place among contests. Thinkers debated virtue and justice beneath olive trees, seeing in the games a mirror of human aspiration. For them, the harmony of competition reflected the harmony Zeus demanded of the cosmos itself. Thus, Olympia became not just a place of sport, but a living temple where every act honored the divine order. From dawn processions to midnight songs, every ritual stitched together faith, community, and human striving. The games were proof that worship could be joyous, communal, and full of life, rather than solemn and distant. And so, through ritual and ceremony, The Greeks learned that faith was strongest when lived in body and spirit. The contests of Olympia were not simple games. They were trials of devotion framed within the gaze of Zeus himself. Each event was chosen with care, reflecting virtues the Greeks believed, honored the king of gods and all Olympus. The Stadian race was always first, for swiftness was seen as purity, unburdened motion like lightning from the sky. Athletes lined the track barefoot, muscles tense, each step a prayer that their bodies would reflect divine harmony. When the signal sounded, they ran with all they had, each stride echoing the rhythm of faith and sacred duty. The winner was crowned with an olive wreath, a symbol of peace, purity, and Zeus's eternal approval of effort. But there was more than running. The games tested strength through wrestling, a contest of balance, not of cruelty. Two athletes faced each other, straining with discipline, their struggle symbolizing the eternal balance of cosmic order. The crowd cheered, not for brute force, but for fairness, for technique, and for respect that mirrored Zeus's justice. Another trial was the discus, a heavy disc spun into the air, glinting like a sunbeam cast toward the heavens. Each throw was a gesture of offering, strength turned into flight, a symbol of reaching upward to honor the gods. The javelin, too, was sacred, for its soaring, arc-mirrored prayers, rising skyward, graceful and filled with intent. Every distance gained was measured not only in numbers but in faith, devotion, and harmony with divine order. The long jump carried similar meaning, for the leap was seen as striving beyond mortal limits toward the eternal. Athletes wore no armor, wielded no weapons, for the games were not about war, but peace under Zeus's blessing. Even the chariot races, though loud and dramatic, were seen as reflections of discipline, control, and noble ambition. Horses thundered across the hippodrome, their speed like the winds of Olympus, their power restrained by mortal skill. The crowd gasped at every turn, but the true glory was in mastery, not chaos, in harmony, not destruction. These contests together formed a mosaic of worship, each event a living ritual under the summer sun of Olympia. The games were not divided by wealth, for even humble citizens could rise to glory if guided by discipline. Victory was sweet, yet the act of striving, of giving all, was itself a gift worthy of Zeus's eternal favor. The Greeks saw the games as proof that human bodies, shaped with care, could reflect the beauty of divine design. To them, strength was not pride alone, but gratitude, a way to thank Zeus for the blessings of life and order. Every drop of sweat shed on the track became sacred, each contest a hymn, carried not in words but in action. The athletes became living offerings, their bodies temples of devotion, their efforts flames burning in Zeus's honor. The spectators knew this truth as well, for in watching they too joined the ritual, giving voice to the sacred. Each cheer was more than encouragement. It was a chorus of faith rising. With the dust and sunlight of Olympia, the games were living proof that worship was not bound to temples, but alive in the striving hearts of men. And so, through stadion, discus, javelin, and chariot, the Greeks celebrated Zeus not with silence, but with motion. In every contest, they found devotion, and in every victory, they found the blessing of the Father of gods. The Olympic Games were not only about athletes, they were a gathering of all Greece beneath the watch of Zeus. Merchants arrived with goods, filling the valley with colors, scents, and sounds of markets that thrived beside the games. Poets recited new verses, weaving tales of heroes and gods, reminding listeners that every story honored Olympus. Philosophers gathered in shaded groves, debating justice, virtue, and the meaning of harmony in a divided world. Artists carried clay and marble, carving figures of athletes whose forms reflected divine order and human effort. The games became a festival of culture as much as competition, a place where thought and art stood beside sport. Everywhere, hymns echoed, music filled the air, and devotion to Zeus was expressed not only in contests, but in life. Children listened to traveling bards who sang of Heracles, of Perseus, and of Zeus guiding the destiny of mankind. These stories reminded all that greatness was not born of chance, but of courage, discipline, and the favor of gods. Priests maintained sacred rituals, lighting fires, pouring libations, and ensuring the games remained holy in purpose. Their presence gave structure so that the festival never strayed from reverence, even amidst laughter and joy. The crowd included rulers, farmers, artisans, and travelers, all joined together by faith in Zeus and love for peace. No city was too proud to attend, for the games were seen as a bond that transcended borders and rivalries. The Olympic truce made it possible, reminding every soul that peace itself was an offering to the Father of gods. As days passed, victories were celebrated not with riches, but with song, garlands, and eternal honor in memory. Poets immortalized winners in verses. Their names carried far beyond Olympia, their deeds tied to divine blessing. Statues were raised for some, yet even those who lost returned home with pride, for effort itself was holy. The games taught that striving for excellence was a way to live in harmony with Zeus's will and cosmic order. This message spread across Greece, inspiring cities to honor not only warlike valor, but also discipline and peace. Olympia became a symbol of unity, a place where the spirit of Zeus was felt in every stone, tree, and voice. The festival's atmosphere lingered long after contests ended. Its memory carried home like sacred fire in the heart. For citizens, the games were proof that faith was not distant. It lived in action, music, stories, and human bonds. They returned to their cities, inspired, eager to carry forth harmony, knowing they had touched the spirit of Olympus. The legacy of each festival grew, building a tradition where culture and devotion blended in radiant celebration. And so, Olympia was not merely a sanctuary of sport, but a living tapestry of worship, learning, and shared hope. Here, every Greek athlete, poet, or child found themselves part of a grand act of faith beneath the sky of Zeus. The games revealed that worship was not narrow or confined, but wide, alive, and expressed in countless ways. Through music, story, art, and contest, mortals reached upward, reflecting the greatness of the god they honored. And thus, the Olympic festival became a mirror of divine beauty, where all of Greece found unity in Zeus. As the Olympic Games flourished, they carried a message that reached far beyond the valley of Olympia. The truce of Zeus reminded every city that even rivals could find harmony when faith stood above pride and power. For weeks during the festival, wars ceased, roads grew safe, and travelers moved without fear across the Greek world. This peace was seen as sacred, not created by men alone, but blessed by the will of the Father of gods. The games thus became a symbol of what Greece could be when unity triumphed over endless division and strife. Citizens returned home inspired, carrying with them not only stories of contests, but also visions of shared harmony. Philosophers praised the games as proof that humanity could rise above conflict when guided by divine principle. They argued that the contests reflected the balance Zeus demanded, where fairness, discipline, and peace ruled supreme. The olive crown, simple and pure, became more than a prize. It was a reminder of unity under divine authority. Every victor carried that crown back to their city, not as personal wealth, but as a gift of sacred honor. The games reminded rulers that true glory was not conquest, but the ability to bring people together in peace. For ordinary citizens, the festival was a glimpse of hope, showing that devotion could weave harmony across borders. Artists captured this spirit, painting scenes of races, feasts, and peace treaties celebrated beneath the gaze of Zeus. Poets sang of a Greece united, where cities laid down arms and joined hands in honor of the Father of gods. These songs spread across the land, carrying the spirit of Olympia even to those who had never seen its fields. Travelers told tales of sacred fire, of crowds cheering together, of a peace stronger than walls or iron weapons. In time, the games shaped Greek identity, binding city-states into one culture through shared reverence and tradition. Though rivalries endured, the memory of Olympia always reminded them of what was possible beneath Zeus's blessing. The truce itself became legendary, respected even when wars raged, for no ruler dared defy the sacred decree. The games taught that worship was not passive. It was active, communal, and capable of reshaping the world. Through sport, Greece learned that peace was not weakness, but strength, a reflection of divine justice and order. This message echoed for centuries, influencing not only Greeks but later cultures who admired their sacred festival. Even in distant lands, stories spread of a people who gathered in peace, offering strength and faith in equal measure. The Olympic spirit became an example, showing that human effort, guided by faith, could bridge walls and divisions. Every 4 years, when the Games returned, so too returned the hope that harmony could be stronger than conflict. And each time, Greece renewed its faith that Zeus desired not endless battle, but peace born of unity and worship. Thus, the Games were more than tradition. They were a vision of the world as it might be under divine law. And in that vision, mortals glimpsed the eternal truth, that unity, like devotion, was the highest gift to Zeus. The Olympic Games carried not only the echo of competition, but also the whispers of eternity under Zeus's sky. Generations passed, yet the sacred fire at Olympia burned, reminding all of a covenant between gods and mortals. Each festival renewed faith, proving that worship could live not only in temples but in the rhythm of human effort. Zeus's presence was felt not in thunder alone, but in the harmony of athletes striving toward noble and fair ideals. The Games were proof that faith could be woven into daily life, where discipline became a hymn and courage a prayer. Parents brought children to witness the festival, hoping they would carry its lessons into their future and cities. They taught that honor was not in conquest, but in fairness, not in riches, but in the offering of one's best self. In this way, Olympia became a school of the spirit, where devotion and discipline met beneath the gaze of Zeus. The victors who returned home carried not just crowns, but the living example of piety, humility, and sacred duty. Their names endured because they reflected not only strength, but the grace of those who honored the divine order. Poets continued to sing their praises, linking human excellence with divine will in verses treasured across Greece. These songs became bridges of memory, tying each generation to the spirit of the festival and the Father of gods. Even those who never competed felt included. For the Games were about more than victory, they were about belonging. Every shout of the crowd, every hymn, every race was part of a greater act of worship, alive and unforgettable. Through centuries, the Games became a mirror of Greece itself, reflecting its dreams, virtues, and devotion to Zeus. As time passed, the legacy grew, reaching beyond Greece, inspiring cultures that saw in Olympia a model of peace. The idea that sport could be worship, that contests could unite, became a seed carried into distant ages. Though empires would rise and fall, the vision of Olympia remained eternal, kept alive in memory and tradition. The flame of devotion never died, for it was more than fire. It was the spirit of unity beneath the Father of gods. Zeus's name was invoked, not in fear, but in reverence, as mortals learned that harmony was his greatest command. The Games endured as testimony that worship was not confined, but expansive, touching every part of human life. In their striving, mortals found themselves closer to the divine, shaped by ideals greater than their own desires. The stadium was not only an arena, but a sanctuary filled with the heartbeat of faith expressed through action. And as each festival ended, its echo lingered, a promise that in 4 years the covenant would be renewed again. Thus, the story of Olympia was not of dust or ruin, but of living memory, carried through song, flame, and faith. It was proof that devotion to Zeus was not fleeting, but eternal, woven into the very soul of the Greek world. And so, the Games stood as a bridge between earth and sky, mortals and gods, discipline, and divine order. Their legacy would inspire not only the Greeks but all mankind, showing that peace and worship could walk together. And in every race, every hymn, every prayer, mortals glimpsed the eternal truth. Zeus smiled upon their unity,